Hey everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel. So today video is again inspired from a book Grimm's fairy tale. Before continuing, please do subscribe to my hard work and give me a chance to grow my channel. Once upon a time, fairies once lived in a far off country where a king and queen reigned. Although they had been married for many years and had lots of money, excellent clothing, food and drink to enjoy as well as carriage to ride in every day. But the king and queen were terribly saddened by the fact that they had no children. But one day, the poor little fish had pushed itself out of the water and was lying gasping and almost dead on the bank of the river when the queen walked past it at the foot of the garden. When the little fish was returned to the river by the queen out of compassion, it raised its head above the water and stated, "I know what your wish is, and it shall be fulfilled. In return for your kindness to me, you will soon have a daughter." What the small fish had said soon came to pass, and the queen gave birth to a baby girl who was so lovely that the king was overcome with excitement and declared he would throw a huge party. The queen added, "I'll have the fairies too, so they can be good to our little daughter." There were now 13 fairies living in the realm. But because there was only 12 golden dishes that the king and queen had to eat from, so they had to expel one of the fairies without her consent. 12 fairies arrived, each wearing a high red cap, red heels, and holding a long white wand in her hand. After the feast, they assembled in a circle and presented the little princess with their greatest gifts. She received goodness, beauty, money, and so on until she got all that was good in the world. A loud disturbance was heard in the courtyard, just as the other 11 fairies were blessing the girl. It was then reported that the 13th fairy had arrived, wearing a black cap, black shoes, and holding a broomstick. She then rose and entered the dining room. She was now extremely frustrated over not being invited to the feast and punished the king and queen by cursing, "The king's daughter will be struck by a spindle in her 15th year and die." Then the 12th of the good fairies, who hadn't yet given her gift, stood up and declared that the evil wish must come true, but that she could lessen its harm. As a result, her gift was that the king's daughter's injury from the spindle would only cause her to sleep for 100 years, rather than to actually die. The king, however, hoped to completely protect his beloved child from the looming danger, so he commanded that all the spindles in the kingdom be bought up and burned. But in the meantime, all of the 11 fairies' gifts became reality, since the princess was so loving, polite, nice, and wise that she was adored by everyone who knew her. One day, she was left alone in the palace on the day that she turned 15 because the king and queen were not home. She then wandered throughout by herself, exploring every room and chamber, till she eventually came to an old tower to which there was a small door and narrow stairway leading up to it. There was a golden key inside the door. As she turned it, the door swung open, revealing an elderly woman spinning away, quite busy. The princess asked, "What are you doing there?" The elderly woman said, "Spinning," and moved her head as the wheel buzzed. The princess took the spindle and tried to spin it, commenting on how pretty it turned around. But before she even touched it, the fairy's prophecy came true and she was injured by the spindle and lay motionless on the ground. The king and queen, who had just returned home together with the rest of their court, all fell asleep as well. The horses slept in the stables, the dogs slept in the court. The birds slept on top of the house, and even the flies slept on the walls. The old palace was soon surrounded by a sizable thorn hedge, which got larger and thicker with each passing year. Eventually, the old palace was completely hidden, with neither the roof nor the chimneys visible. However, word of the lovely sleeping Briar rose spread throughout the entire realm, and as a result, several kings' sons occasionally came and attempted to scale the wall and enter the palace. However, none of them were able to accomplish this. because the thorns and bushes grabbed them as through with hands, causing them to become stuck and die in a pitiful manner. A king's son entered the country after a very long time, and the old man told him the tale of a thorny thicket and a great princess known as Briar who was sleeping there with her entire court. He also related how his grandfather had told him that other princes had arrived and had attempted to cut through the thicket, but that they had all become caught and perished as a result. The young prince then remarked, "I won't let this scare me. I'm going to visit this Briar rose." The elderly man made an effort to stop him, but he was determined to depart. The 100 years had come to an end that very day. As the prince approached the thicket, he was met only with loving flowering plants, which he easily pulled through. Then he finally arrived at the palace. He noticed that the horses were standing in the stables, the dogs were sleeping in the court, and the pigeons were dozing off on the roof. Later, he reached the old tower and unlocked the door to the tiny chamber where the Briar Rose was. She was there, sound asleep on a couch near the window, and everything was so quiet that he could hear every breath he took. He was unable to keep his eyes off her since she was so stunning, so he knelt down to kiss her. However, as soon as he kissed her, she opened her eyes, awoke, and grinned at him. They then left together, and soon the king and queen, as well as the rest of the court, also awoke. They all looked at each other in wonder. The dogs leapt up and growled, the horses spoke, the pigeons peered out from their wings, glanced around, and flew into the fields, and the insects on the walls started buzzing once more. The wedding feast was served after the prince and Briar Rose were wed, and they went on to live happily ever after.